The Leah Renee Podcast.
I love it, I love it, I love it!
Well, guess what? There's stuff you can do to make it not be so awful.
We gonna Drax. Sclounce.
I have a crush on every
A low point of my life. I mean, things were bad.
You're a nut job. You're eating bugs.
Hello, this is the Leah Renee Podcast. I decided to do video today because I've done some interviews with other people that had video, and it seemed kind of weird to go back to audio. So if you're listening to this, you don't know it, but I am wearing a wig. I love wigs, and I have a theory that white women are not allowed to wear wigs in the same way that black women can wear wigs. The only time that you see white women wearing wigs is if they have hair loss, like alopecia or from chemotherapy. If they're Jewish, there's hashtag not all Jewish people, but there are certain sects in Judaism where you're not supposed to show your hair, so some women will wear wigs instead. But then there's kind of this controversy because if your wig is super nice, then it's like, what's the point? So there will be Jewish women that wear ugly wigs to make sure that people know that they're wearing a wig. I'm not sure if you think this classifies as an ugly wig or not. I am wearing it because I'm going to talk about Byron Katie a little bit today. I actually got this wig because I wanted to dye it neon yellow because maybe you can't see with the lighting, but it's white. Kind of looks blonde here. What do you think? I really want to wear wigs on stage. That's what I'm saying. I really think they're fun, but I can't get away with it. And I've talked to friends about it, and they're like, if you want to wear a wig, especially my black friends. They're like, do it. I don't know. It's funny because there's a comedian in Philly named Ebony. She's very funny, and she'll show up at a mic with long blonde hair. And then the next time I see her, her hair will be natural. And the next time she has a short, straight black bob wig or something. She changes it up all the time. And nobody ever says anything. Whereas if I roll up in a big curly red wig, people are like, what are you doing? And the next time I show up, I've got this wig on. Like it's off-putting, I guess. Am I simultaneously trying to normalize the color of neon yellow and white wig wearing? Maybe. Maybe it's too ambitious. But I thought that my own podcast would be a safe space to wear my wigs. And I think it helps because for solo podcasts, each episode will look a little bit different. And it's just so fun to try on different hairstyles. How do I feel in this wig? It's a little Karen. It's a little sassy. It's a little kind of mature, sophisticated. Do I read Vogue or Country Living? I'm not sure. But I think it's fun. I think wigs are fun. I will stand by that. If 10 years down the road, they pull this up and want to cancel me for my excessive wig use, even though it's really frowned upon. Something tells me wearing wigs is not going to be in the same camp as blackface. But maybe. We don't know. We really don't know. Maybe we're going to have robots that wear wigs, and that's kind of their thing. And then they're going to look back at humans that wore wigs and say how insensitive and hurtful that is because robots are from a hairless community, and for embodied souls to wear wigs is making fun of. I don't know. I can't predict the future, obviously. Hopefully you've liked the recent podcasts I've had with guests. It's been very fun. So what I've been into lately. If you have listened to any previous episodes or read my Substack, you know that I have been into Cal Newport lately. If you don't know who Cal Newport is, he is an authoritative voice about digital distraction. He's written many best-selling books, and I figured it out. Cal Newport looks like a child actor that grew up. He looks like a 40-year-old, 10-year-old. He has a very baby face, like most child actors. Have you noticed that? Like Macaulay Culkin and the kid from The Sixth Sense, Daniel Radcliffe from Harry Potter, even Emma Watson. It's like as they grow up, they still just look like a kid that's starting to get wrinkles and has facial hair. Does that make sense? Very baby face. Cal, I don't think you're going to see this. I'm not trying to roast you. And I shout out Cal Newport stuff all the time on my podcast because it's so interesting to me. This week, I listened to a couple of episodes. One that I found particularly interesting was his interview with Anna Lemke. She's a scientist, a researcher, an author. I think her main focus is on addiction. That's most of the books that she's written about. But specifically, they talked about being addicted to your phone and digital addictions, which is really fascinating because it brings up questions about unavoidable physical addiction. For example, if someone's addicted to alcohol, or I think the nice way, the more modern way is saying someone experiencing alcohol addiction. If you're a heavy drinker and you stop cold turkey, as far as I understand, your body goes through physical withdrawals. And so you're meant to be at a treatment center or quit alcohol under the supervision of a professional. This is not my area of expertise, but this is what I understand. Same thing with meth, and there's methadone and all these different ways that you have to step down because your body physically reacts when it stops getting that substance. Then people have questions about marijuana, for example. A lot of proponents of marijuana will say it's not addictive. And while it's true that cannabinoids, is that really the word? I'm not going to look it up, aren't chemically in the same family as opioids, people can still become addicted to it. Not necessarily because marijuana itself is addictive, but often because the pattern emerges. You come home from work, you smoke a joint, you watch some TV, you go to bed. Next day, stressful day at work, smoke a joint. So you develop this pattern. And I think the reason I can understand that kind of addiction is because I would say that I had a food addiction. I certainly ate much more than my body needed, and I did it to numb uncomfortable emotions. When Anna talks about digital addiction, it's the same kind of pattern thing. And I think most people can relate to this because I would say the majority of populations who have personal devices and easy access to the internet experience this. So you've probably felt this way. You're waiting in line somewhere, you're kind of bored, so you pull out your phone and you scroll through it. There are even people who scroll on the toilet, which is crazy to me. When I go to the bathroom, I just go in, do my business, and I can't imagine. Maybe I'm just a fast pooper. Maybe I could be more empathetic to people that take a long time to poop. But even then, it just kind of seems like just sit there. But before phones, people would read. I've been to bathrooms where there's kind of a mini library in there, which also seems very strange. But that's sort of the point. Cal Newport is a big proponent of being bored. Let your mind wander. It's very good and healthy for us to not be constantly stimulated. Anna Lembke talked about dopamine, which is something that most of us have heard about. It's actually pretty common knowledge that dopamine is this reward-seeking hormone that our bodies have. We get dopamine as a kid on Christmas morning when we see a bunch of presents and we want to know what's inside it. And this system was set up millions of years ago for humans to climb up a tree and grab a coconut to break open what's inside. That anticipation actually has a purpose, but the problem is we're doing it all the time. So what Lembke explains, I hope I'm pronouncing her name right, it's Lembk. I guess it could be Lempk. I need to go back and listen. I'm sorry, Anna, I didn't look up how to pronounce your name. What she explained is in the same way that if you are addicted to, let's say, oxycodone, this is a big problem. Someone will have a surgery, they're given oxycodone for pain, they start taking it, and then eventually your body gets used to that and resets so that you need more and more of it. And not just more and more to feel better and better, but even to just get back to baseline. And that's a problem because before you ever had oxycodone, you were fine. You didn't know what you were missing. But once your body becomes chemically dependent on it, you feel badly and you need it just to feel baseline. So she explained homeostasis and how we know that homeostasis within the body, like if you're hot, your body will sweat because evaporation is a cooling process. So you have moisture on your skin so that the wind cools you off. She explained how the brain also has a homeostatic system to help you feel normal. And what happens when you keep engaging short-term motivational system, your brain adjusts on the other side to make you feel worse because your brain's trying to pull you away from that. Essentially, you start to feel really badly unless you're getting that hit in the same way that you would have withdrawals from oxycodone, which is crazy because it's not a chemical, it's a behavior. That's why I think it's so fascinating because we finally have the science on it, but a lot of us aren't acting on it. They talked about cell phones and kids. I just found out in Australia, they just made social media illegal under the age of 16, which I think is fantastic. Screens are very tempting. I'm not going to deny that, especially when you have little kids. But it hijacks your brain and it strengthens these short-term reward circuits to the point where you can't concentrate anymore. I'm embarrassed to say this, but when I had Instagram on my phone a couple of years ago, I knew I didn't want to be on it, but I sort of need it for comedy because I get messages about shows. They send you the lineup, things like that. So for my job, I would need to check it for details about a gig that I would have. But I got in the habit of opening it, and I can remember opening Instagram and scrolling through stuff and going, I don't want to be on this. And I'd shut down Instagram and then see my blank phone screen. And half a second later, I would just like a robot open it back up and be like, I just shut Instagram. That's insane. What am I doing? I took Instagram off my phone a while ago. And just like Cal Newport says, it's amazing how boring your phone is when you don't have addictive apps on it. Sometimes I'll check my email a lot, but email usually just doesn't scratch that itch. It's a lot of marketing emails and boring stuff. Email's not meant to manipulate you into being on it longer. Although, did you notice that Gmail added a react button to emails? Did you see that? I actually had a joke about that. Have you ever tried to like an email? And that happened to me a couple of years ago. I got one and went, oh, that's so sweet. And I just, so crazy, just went to like it and went, oh, you actually have to write a response. You can't just... Cal Newport had an article recently called There's a Good Reason You Can't Concentrate, and talked about these short-term reward systems in our brains and how it diminishes our ability to concentrate and to focus. And in it, he suggested a cognitive fitness revolution, kind of like the exercise boom in the 80s where people started running more and doing aerobics and things like that. He outlined 5 workout routines or things that you can do to help make your brain more fit in the same way that you might go jogging every day for cardiovascular health. It's brainiovascular health. I just made that up. And I really like his suggestions and I've been doing them. So if you want, I'll tell you the 5 things. If it's something you're genuinely interested in, I do recommend listening to his full podcast. I will just sum them up because I've enjoyed doing them myself. The first one is read every day. Just like we are encouraged to get 10,000 steps a day to move our bodies, reading every day is one of those activities that gradually strengthens and makes your brain better. So reading 15 to 30 pages a day in a book, nothing with a backlit screen, an actual book, is better to read a chunk a day, just like it's better to get 10,000 steps a day rather than putting off all your reading or all of your walking to a Saturday where you do 80,000 steps. Regular reading is really, really good for your brain. In fact, it reminds me of one of the greatest comedians of all time. Brian Regan has a fantastic bit about reading and how nobody really argues against reading. It's something we've always known is good for us.
I'm trying to learn how to read because I read better. Because I hear it's like good for you or something. Anybody here? It's got a good reputation, right? Nobody ever badmouths it. You never see a point-counterpoint show about reading. And in the pro side of reading, like a professor with a bow tie. And in the opposite side, hey, let me tell you something. Reading don't never do nothing. Because if you did have it.
I don't know if that's just because we know literacy is extremely important, but there are a lot of cognitive things that I will go on record as saying I didn't really know. I mean, I knew reading's good for you, but I didn't know how good it is for your brain. One of the things that reading does is it rewires your brain for more complex thoughts because it's using different parts that all have to merge together, so you get a more complex brain. It also helps us focus our attention on something, a fixed point, which as visual people, it's much easier to focus your visual attention on something like, look at that pigeon over there, and you can do that. But when you're in a book, you're focusing your mental attention, and that's really good for you. I'm someone who believes in reading, but I don't read as much as some other people that I'm very close to. My mom, for example, she reads all the time, and I love that. I just don't always make time for it. I often listen to podcasts. When I read, I usually get quite sleepy, so I'll pick up a book, very excited to read it, and then a page or two in, I start kind of nodding off. But what he suggested to do, if you're not already in the habit of regularly reading, he said start with something easy. Start with something that you really like, and then later work up to the harder stuff. Kind of like walk, jog, run. You're more likely to develop this as a regular practice if you start with something enjoyable. In fact, it reminded me of something that happened when I was pregnant with my second. I was really frustrated because full term pregnancy is 40 weeks. It's difficult to calculate exactly when a person got pregnant. You usually don't know unless it's in vitro or something. But my first baby came at 38 weeks. So with my second, when I hit 38 weeks, I was like, okay, all right. And then 39 weeks. Okay, that's fine. Then I hit 40 weeks and I thought, okay, full term, any day now. And then I hit 41 weeks and I was starting to go a bit crazy, and my midwife suggested that I stop thinking about it. The baby's going to come whenever they're going to come. Just do your best to relax. And she suggested that I read. I'm kind of a snobby pants, and I thought if I'm going to spend the time reading, I want it to be a literary classic. I want to be smarter because I read it. She suggested anything, just trashy, whatever page turner, Twilight, I think she suggested, which I don't know if you know how I feel about Twilight. Not a fan. Even though Stephanie Meyer is Mormon. Did you know that? Stephanie Meyer is Mormon, the one who wrote the Twilight series. Anyway, I have a joke about that. We won't go into it. So I thought, ew, no, I can't do Twilight. So I looked through a list of classic books, and because I believed that my baby would be born fairly soon, I didn't want a super thick book, but something that I could get into. And I chose from a list of classics, Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness. I did not get far into that book before I swallowed my pride and said, I'm just going to read something easy, because genocide in the Congo, surprisingly, not a really fun topic to read, especially when you are about to give birth. I think I got the book and just opened it up to a page and started reading. I was like, oh no. I chose what I thought was very funny and cheeky, the never-ending story, because that's how I felt about this never-ending pregnancy. If you want to know the end of that story, my second daughter came at 42 weeks, and she was 10 pounds, 2 ounces. Yeah, I wish she would have come. If she would have come at 38 weeks, I could have had a small 8-pound baby. All of my kids have been gigantic. Okay, the next thing Cal Newport said is don't avoid writing. Writing is another thing that is incredible for our brain. It's like doing pull-ups, doing sprints. It's incredible for brain health. And the big problem right now is that generative AI is fairly good at cobbling together emails and essays. So he suggested if you're at work and they say someone needs to write an email to so-and-so, volunteer to do it. And don't use AI. Get in there, go through the work to have to word things out. Again, like reading, it's using different parts of your brain. It's forcing you to focus. Writing is one of those things that people get excited about. Oh, AI wrote my paper for me. I even know people that use AI for dating apps. Apparently, there are dating apps that give you AI suggested responses, which is insane to me, that especially if you're trying to find somebody that you actually want to spend the rest of your life with, it's not so much that you're compatible with each other, it's if your AI agents are compatible. I'm sure somebody probably has a joke about it. I don't really do Tinder jokes because that's not my world, but it's a lot of comedians' world, so they're thinking about it all the time. Let me know if you've seen a good Tinder AI writing joke, because I would be curious to see what people are saying. So writing, write as much as you can. I write every day, but I do morning pages and I write them really tiny so that I can't go back and read it. But lately I've been writing bigger so that I can actually see it. So there's a little bit more accountability for me to really focus my thoughts. Okay, number 3, go on thinking walks. That's what he calls them. I call them clarity walks because I'm trying to get clear on things. In the past, there's been a thin line between thinking and ruminating. I don't know how much I've talked about OCD on here, but that's been something that I used to engage in. So I like clarity better because clarity suggests more of a purpose. And at the end of the walk, you will have accomplished something that you understand yourself or a subject a bit better. That's one minor change I would make. Thinking walks are meant for self-reflection or reflection on a subject. When you go on a thinking walk, no podcast, no music, no phone. He said, go on the walk without your phone or maybe put it at the bottom of your backpack so it's hard to get. Don't be tempted to check it. This is a meditative practice where you just wander around, let your mind go wherever it wants. A meditative walk for you to pick a problem that you want to solve, or maybe a daydream. Maybe you're planning a trip. When your mind wanders, you can come back to that. I've really enjoyed these. In fact, I now alternate between doing morning pages right when I wake up and doing a clarity walk when I first wake up. I walk for an hour, no podcast, no nothing. And it's been really good. I can already see some improvements in my attention, and especially what he talks about, the long-term motivation system and the short-term motivation system. I'm seeing how less impulsive I'm getting, even to check my email when I'm home. And that's felt great. Number 4, he says, plug in your phone. Someone calls this landlining. You pick one spot for your phone, maybe in the kitchen, not in a bedroom, plug it into the wall and leave it there and don't unplug it. Electrically speaking, I'm not sure how good that is for your phone. I know it's going to use up a little bit more electricity, but the idea is to treat your phone like a landline. If you have a thought that you need to text or call somebody, you just walk in there, do the thing, and then leave. This way, you can't walk around with it. So the only time that you use your phone is for an intentional reason. Okay, last one, learn a hard skill. By hard skill, he means something that requires a lot of focus and that there's a measurable result, some kind of clear reward. An example of this would be playing an instrument or weightlifting, something that you're not that good at it when you first start, but you regularly put in the time to practice it, and then you can see those gains. So weightlifting is a perfect example because that's extremely measurable. You know, the first time I bench pressed, I could only do the bar. And then maybe 3 weeks later, you're adding, I don't know anything about weightlifting. So I'm like, you're adding 20 pounds. I'm like, is that normal? That seems, isn't the bar like 15 pounds? Or it's like the bar is heavy. Anyway, I don't know what I'm talking about with weightlifting, but I do have a close friend who's very into it, and she makes goals of the amounts that she can lift. So that's a perfect example that you can't really bullcrap your way around. If you're not actually putting in the time to lift weights, you're not going to be able to keep lifting more. Same thing with playing an instrument. Some people are very good at sight reading, but typically if there's a difficult song, the first time you try it, you're fumbling around. But as you little by little put in this regular practice, you start to get good, and it's an amazing feeling. So this is what he's talking about, the long-term reward system. It gets you to practice focusing. It requires more discipline, and it feels really great when you finally can do the thing that you were trying to do. I was wondering if training my cockatiel would count, because it requires a lot of patience and a lot of discipline, because he doesn't really like us. He'll eat from our hand, but he will not step up. I don't think it's ideal because he might just have that kind of personality. So that's the Cal Newport brain fitness routine. One of the main things that I've been doing is reading, and that is why I chose this wig today. This is the closest thing that I had to Byron Katie's hair. If you don't know who Byron Katie is, I will introduce her to you. She is, I guess you would say, a self-help person. She's known for something called The Work, and it's a series of questions that you ask yourself when you have a stressful thought. I find Byron Katie's work to be very similar to cognitive behavioral therapy. However, it's a bit more lovey-dovey, a little more Buddhist, a little more radical acceptance. Honestly, the book I've been reading from Byron Katie reminds me of Jill Bolte Taylor's talk about having a stroke. If you haven't seen that, it was one of the first viral TED Talks. Incredible talk. She's a neuroscientist who had a stroke, and it took out the left side of her brain. And when the left side went down, her experience that she describes kind of sounds like someone on a mushroom trip. It's very woo-woo. She describes not being able to figure out where she ended and the world began, like she couldn't kind of see the ends of her hands, and she just felt all of the love of humankind and how we're all one. And when you hear her talk about it, you're like, did you do drugs? No, this is just what happens when we don't have a left brain. It's pretty nutty. I suppose you could look at Byron Katie's work from a very scientific standpoint, but when you read her books, they're not heavy on the science and the data. However, there are a lot of people working on that right now, and you can look up studies. But this is the book that I'm reading, Byron Katie, A Mind at Home with Itself. See the hair? It's a great book. Each of her books have a different emphasis. This one merges what she calls the work, which is the series of questions that you ask yourself, and the Diamond Sutra. To be honest, I get a little bit sidetracked with kind of the Buddhist-y language. I'm not really used to that world. So I tend to like, as she goes further into each chapter, and sometimes has a transcript of conversations that she's had with people. If you're curious what these questions are, they are, is it true? Can you absolutely know it's true? How do you react? what happens when you believe the thought? Who would you be without the thought? This doesn't make that much sense unless you take a specific example. So the stressful thought that you might have is, my brother is such a judgmental jerk, he should apologize. So you would take that phrase, my brother's such a jerk. Is it true? You might say, yeah, but then when you get to the second one, can you absolutely know that's true? Can you absolutely know your brother is a jerk? Well, no. I don't know. Sometimes when you're really, really angry, it can feel like, can you absolutely know? But if you get down to the truth of things, you kind of see that, yeah, okay, maybe I'm overreacting. Then the question, how do you react when you believe the thought, my brother is such a jerk, he's so judgmental, he should apologize? How do you actually physically feel? Does your heart go faster? Do your fists clench or your teeth? Does it feel tight in your back? Do you get a pit in your stomach? Everyone's a little bit different, but you can feel in your body if you get quiet when you're stressed out or upset about something. Then you ask yourself, who would I be without the thought, my brother is such a judgmental jerk, he should apologize? If I were incapable of believing that, how would I feel if I could never think that about him? And like 100% of the time, the answer is, I would feel better. I would feel free. I would love him. I would invite him over more, whatever it is. And then you have the turnaround. And I think this one is probably the most controversial because as I've done Byron Katie's work, sometimes kind of feels like gaslighting yourself for the greater good. The weird thing is I actually feel better after I've questioned my thoughts and gone through it. But the turnaround's at the end where you play with the structure of the sentence just to experience what it would feel like if you thought something differently. So it doesn't mean that you have to feel that way. But the phrase, my brother is such a jerk, change that to, I'm such a jerk, or my brother is not such a jerk. I'm so judgmental. He's not judgmental. Sometimes you can really play with the grammar in weird ways that it actually ends up being really insightful. Again, this is not saying that the feelings that you had weren't valid, but the point is you're suffering because you have those feelings. So if you want to be free from the burden of stressful thoughts, Byron Katie's method is a way of trying on a different way of viewing it. Some people might say perspective taking, but I think it's more going inside and being as brutally honest with yourself as you can. It's like taking off a really uncomfortable shoe and then realizing that you can go barefoot. And I know that it sounds impractical, and that's one of the main questions or struggles that I have with Byron Katie is how do I actually live in the modern world in this kind of like woo-woo peaceful state, especially in comedy, because my job is mostly complaining. Most of comedy is complaining. And I've really wanted to come up with some kind of bit where I can talk about Byron Katie in my comedy. So this morning on my clarity walk, I had the thought, okay, what's a stressful thought that I have? I have 3 children. Okay, let's take that stressful thought and put it through the work. 1, is it true that I have 3 children? Yes. Can you absolutely know that's true? I mean, probably. Somebody could have roofied me and I signed up to adopt a baby on behalf of someone else who's raising them. But I'm going to guess it's a pretty sure bet that I have 3 children. Number 3, how do you feel when you believe the thought, I have 3 children? Stressed, overwhelmed, underqualified, inadequate, in debt, like I can't get away, like I have no freedom, like this is going to be my life forever. Number 4, who would you be without the thought, I have 3 children? I would be free. I'd be rich. I'd have all the time in the world. I could live anywhere that I want. I could live in a small house. I could always know where my scissors are. I could make any kind of dinner I want. I could put spices in it. I could put cilantro in it. Any kind of vegetable. I'd be free. So turn it around. I don't have 3 kids. 3 kids have me. I am 3 kids. I know it sounds silly, but these are actually kind of deep. So obviously I'm making a joke. I love my kids, but it's really hard to raise kids. That's actually a fun thing that happened this week. A couple of years ago, it was 11:30 on a Tuesday night at a dive bar in Philly. This particular mic is really great because you always get stage time, but it's difficult because there's usually no audience and it's in a bar that has 2 giant screen televisions right next to the stage. So it's usually not a great place to work out jokes and tightly written material that you're really trying to hone. It is a good place for roasting the other comics that are there. Sometimes that's the only thing that will get a laugh. I went to this mic not expecting much out of it, and I ended up being the third person to go up. The first comedian, trigger warning, talked about how he discovered after his dad passed away that there was a year where he claimed an extra child on his taxes. And he thought that was crazy, like, what? We have another brother? Why did dad lie in his taxes? And his mom explained that she had a stillborn. Then this comic proceeds to talk about how that's such a crazy loophole and that he claimed a dependent on his tax years, even though I'm not going to get into the dark, heavy nature of what it is like to experience the loss of a child. But I was like angry as someone who has given birth, as someone who has friends that have lost children, for him to be like, I can't believe you claimed it on your taxes. And I'm like, are you kidding me? You don't have to actually raise a child to be able to claim them on your taxes. The emotional and physical labor of going through full-term pregnancy, of delivering a baby, all of that. That's why I call them Peter Pan comedians, because I'm like, you have no idea outside of your little bubble. Now, for the record, I love this comedian. I'm not naming who they are, but I just sat there like, wow. Then the next comedian got up, talked about how he was a camp counselor and how kids are so bad, parents need to level up, they should spend more time with their kids. Mind you, this is a 22-year-old who I think still lives at home. So to hear a parents need to do better kind of rant really set me off. And so when I got up to do my set, I abandoned all of the stuff I thought I was going to say, and I just went straight Bill Burr on all the comedians that had gone up before me, and it was a magic moment. I think I've talked about it before because it was a pivotal moment in my comedy career, because I found this rage in my belly, having been in thousands of shows and listening, especially to men talking about kids or childbirth or whatever, going, you have no idea the sacrifice and the struggle and all of that. Anyway, it was a crazy night, and I've never had a reaction from the crowd like that before. We were all united. Even the people at the bar who were usually just kind of half listening while they watched the game were in that moment. It felt like the moment on UHF where Stanley Spadalski has a breakdown and the entire bar gathers and they watch it.
Go window and say, hey, these floors are dirty as hell, and I'm not going to take it anymore.
It was a magic moment. And this week at Helium, I saw the comedian who went up right before me. And he was like, oh yeah, I saw you at he brought up this night. And it was great to reconnect with somebody who saw my complete breakdown while I roasted basically everyone in the room. I think I was the only person in that room that has kids. And I think it was so beautiful because I got to say what I really felt, and I didn't give an F word what people thought of it, even though because of their life situation, they could have been offended by it. I laid into people that don't have kids, and they were surprisingly okay with it. What was it that made it okay for me to be like, you're terrible people? And they laughed at it. I'd never had that before. So often I'm in my head about, well, I don't want to say it that way because I don't want to hurt somebody's feeling. Well, most of the people in this room are in their 20s or 30s, so I'll try to say stuff that they think. I didn't care. I didn't care if it seemed relevant. I was 100% myself, and I have been chasing that dragon ever since, which is hilarious because it wasn't a big fancy venue. It wasn't what most comedians would consider their dream gig, but it fully embodied the Bill Hicks quote that I love so much. Less jokes, more me. I was 100% myself, unhinged, raw, passionate, and they liked it. And I don't know how to do that over and over again. It's honestly one of the reasons why I like this podcast, because I'm being myself. I'm wearing a weird wig. And yes, before I record, I'm like, Leah, are you really going to do this? I'm like, no. I like wigs, okay? I have a giant bin in my basement of wigs that I have been collecting ever since we moved back to the U.S. Y'all, today is a good day. My favorite thrift store just brought all their Halloween stuff out, including wigs. So I got this, which I had quite a collection of wigs before we moved to the UK, but in a bout of minimalism, I got rid of them all. So now I'm slowly building back my collection, and I don't have enough opportunities to wear them, okay? So I'm going to wear wigs on this show, probably, if I can maintain that same can-do spirit throughout the course of this podcast. I don't know if I would wear them with my interviews or if that's going to throw off. See, this is a stressful thought that Byron Katie. Okay, I'll take you through the work. I shouldn't wear wigs when I interview people because it will make them feel uncomfortable. Is it true? No, In fact, whenever I bring up how much I love wigs, people tell me just wear them. Can I absolutely know it's true? I should not wear wigs when I interview guests. No, I can absolutely know that that's not true. Okay. How do I react? How do I feel when I believe the thought I can't wear wigs when I interview guests? How do I actually feel? To be honest, I want them to have a good time. So I feel okay if it means that they would feel more at ease. They are kind of hot and scratchy. So how do I react when I believe the thought I shouldn't wear wigs? How do I feel? I feel just kind of basic. I feel like I'm not living my best life. I feel like I'm holding back. I feel like I'm hiding something. Like, this would be fun. Let's have fun. And I'm saying, nah. I feel like I'm being strict. It's like work ethic, sensibility stuff that my dad instilled in me, and Mormonism. I just feel kind of, just kind of average, kind of normal. Not really like I'm sucking the marrow out of life. Who would I be without the thought I shouldn't wear wigs when I interview people? I would be wearing a wig. I would be wearing wigs. If I was incapable of having the thought I shouldn't wear wigs, I don't know. They are a bit hot and scratchy, but they are fun. I think you just saw my heart change in real time right now. Did I just commit on this podcast to wear wigs? The real test is if I will persist. Right now, this is a very brand new podcast. I don't have more than a few hundred people that listen to this. If you're watching this on YouTube, it's even less than that. Most of the people that listen to the podcast are doing it on podcasting apps. Very few people watch it on YouTube. It's very bruising to my ego to go onto YouTube and to see, 2 people listen to my podcast, and one of them was probably just me checking to make sure it worked. So yeah, it hurts. It hurts when I go on YouTube and I'm like, nobody loves me. Wearing a wig, it might make it worse. I feel okay about the idea of wearing wigs, but will I persist if people start making mean comments on YouTube? That's the real test. Can I withstand the fiery arrows of my critics and boldly navigate the unknown world of wig wearing and comedy? Okay, it's not an unknown world, but it's kind of hard to get taken seriously. Do I want to be taken seriously? Is that the reason why I don't wear wigs? Because I want to be taken seriously. And that's okay, but is that my highest value? It definitely didn't show up in my values quiz. If you haven't listened to that episode, it's a good one. I mean, not that I'm amazing, but the values quiz that I took, I thought was incredible. I will put a link to that episode. Very interesting. But my idea about wearing wigs completely lines up with the results from my values quiz. This is novelty, baby. This is adventure. It's even pretty self-reliant because it really doesn't matter what happens to my real hair. I can always rely on bad wigs to get me through whatever.
Whatever.
Oh man, there was so much that I wanted to talk about on this, but let me wrap up with a shout out to John Robbins, because this wig thing very much lines up with what he recently talked about on Stuart Goldsmith's podcast. He said, time out if you don't know who John Robbins is. He is a comedian based in England. He, spoiler alert, won the season of Taskmaster that he was on. He's done the Edinburgh Fringe like 10 times. Pretty well-known comedian, podcaster. He just wrote a book about his struggles with alcohol and was primarily on the podcast talking about that. But he mentioned that a comedian friend told him that he was able to make a career out of being John Robbins. Basically, less jokes, more me. John Robbins admitted to always being himself and not enjoying the feeling of having to pretend. He said it's one of the reasons why he preferred stand-up comedy, because he could get on stage and say the things he wanted to say versus acting where he had to pretend he was somebody else. There are plenty of comedians who pretend they're somebody else, sometimes directly, like the way John Kearns does, that he has a character, but sometimes just a persona that somebody develops. Even though it's them and some of it's true, they're not really opening the kimono. But John is somebody that does that. He's true to the experience that he's having. That's what I'm saying about my night as Bill Burr. It was so exhilarating to completely be myself and then have it be accepted. Okay, so the wigs. Is the wig completely being myself, or is it a mask? Am I hiding? Or am I pleasing Yahweh because I'm not showing my hair? Maybe God is Jewish and he's actually really pleased that I'm keeping my hair covered. I don't know. Anyway, John Robbins' interview was so beautiful because he talked about his experience getting off alcohol. Ooh, it's kind of funny. I didn't mean for all these things to kind of come together. I started talking about digital distraction and how we become addicted in the same way that we become addicted to alcohol. Oh, this is amazing. But hearing John talk about his experience not only giving up alcohol, but becoming a different person, becoming a person who can sit with the way that they feel and not have to medicate it, was very interesting to me because I have wanted to talk about my weight loss on stage, but I feel like it's an unwinnable topic. I mentioned this in my interview with Danny Johnson, that men can get away with saying anything they want about their weight, and it's always hilarious. But women are held to such a different standard, and I have mixed feelings about it. Some are very positive. I'm glad for some things, but I'll give you an example. If a comedian who is overweight gets on stage and is like, I'm such a fat pig, we're like, ha, ha, ha. If a female comedian who has a bit of size on her is like, I'm such a fat pig, people are like, oh no, don't say that. And I like that. I like that we're not body shaming her. But the tricky part is I lost 90 pounds and I like being thinner, but I don't want to fat shame anybody, any body types. I think the body positivity movement is great. So I don't want anyone to read my jokes as being, oh, she's just this self-righteous skinny person that lost a bunch of weight and she's shaming everybody else. I don't want it to be that. I don't really have a good grasp on what angle to take in talking about weight loss, other than the angle of, it's crazy that I can't talk about this. It's crazy that other comedians talk about hookups that they've had in graphic detail, and we're all okay with that. But if I say, I lost weight and now I'm considered conventionally attractive. And that's a weird feeling to have. One of my good friends, Mike Kaplan, said, talk about that on stage. So I'm not sure, but hearing John Robbins talk about his experience in AA really resonated with me because a few years ago, I used to attend Overeaters Anonymous. And I know you're not supposed to say it. I'm not in it now, and I would never share anything that anybody shared in the meetings. But I think it actually helps people to know what goes on in the meetings, to have a grasp on especially OA, because if you drink alcohol, your body doesn't actually need that. So you can give up alcohol and never have it for the rest of your life. If you overeat, you can't just swear off food for the rest of your life. And there are people who've been in the program who've had relapses. They actually would call it a break-in abstinence. So they don't use the word sober like they do in AA. They use the word abstinent. And abstinent in that context means abstaining from the over or under consumption of food. Or I would broadly extend that to say food abuse or using food as a drug, which is interesting because this is actually something that Anna Lemke talked about. There is now ITAA, and it's for technology addicted individuals. There's a 12-step group for it now. It's all that same short-term motivation system. My experience in Overeaters Anonymous initially was incredible. I loved going to OA. The stories that people shared were so relatable and they were so funny. And that's exactly what John Robbins said. A lot of the people in these programs are actually kind of like stand-up comedians. They're sharing their personal stories with a twist in a humorous way. And I absolutely felt that in Overeaters Anonymous. I did get to the point where I didn't feel like I was a compulsive overeater emotionally. I can still be weird about food, but it didn't feel like it gripped me. And that was one of the craziest things about Overeaters Anonymous, is that I used to feel kind of jealous of people who struggled with alcohol addiction because they could hide it. You can be a skinny alcoholic, but it was usually pretty obvious in Overeaters Anonymous who was in recovery and who wasn't, because it just showed so clearly on your person. Now, obviously, this is not true for everybody. I know people who have adrenal or thyroid or other kind of issues where they actually are eating a healthy amount of food, they're eating healthy foods, and their body just stores fat differently. So it's not everybody, but there was definitely an envy within the program for the long timers that had been there for 20 years because they were really thin. And I remember kind of feeling not competitive, but like, I need to hurry up and get skinny so people will trust what I say. And maybe I can only speak for myself, but if anybody got self-righteous as they were sharing things about, I know this and that, and pumping themselves up as like, I'm so good, but they had been overweight for a long time, it's like, but do you really? And I'm ashamed to admit that. These are secrets. These are things that I feel badly about. And that's why I have so much respect for John Robbins. I haven't read his book yet, but I will because it's on my list. It's part of my cognitive fitness routine. So I am planning to read the book. But I'm sure he shares some very embarrassing experiences with alcohol. I know he does because he talked about it in his interview. But then there were also things that he held back. I'm I'm actually less embarrassed about how I was with food than how I was when I judged other people. And to tie it all together, because I'm in my Byron Katie wig, I realize that's one of the main reasons that I like the work, because it connects me with other people. It gives me a chance to see something from their perspective. In fact, there's another list of questions you can do called the Judge Your Neighbor worksheet. And that's specifically geared for when you're really pissed off at somebody. And the ways people have been able to go through their stressful experiences and choose to think about it in another way and then experience how it feels physiologically to think that thought. That's the thing. Our thoughts create feelings within us. Anytime you feel stressed, it's because of a thought. People might say, oh, well, no, if you're walking somewhere and there's a lion, then obviously you're going to feel stressed. No, not necessarily, because, for example, if you go to a zoo and there's a lion and it's 6 feet away from you, you're totally not stressed. Why? Because you have this thick piece of glass in front of you, so you're safe. However, there are some people who might still think, oh no, what if he breaks the glass? Or what if he gets out? You always have the option to be stressed out about something. Byron Katie would say the flip side of that is you always have the chance to end your stressful thoughts. I know that sounds controversial. I know it might sound like bypassing or gaslighting. It might. I'm speaking as somebody who was quite judgmental of myself and of other people. It's been very freeing to step away from that pattern of thinking and rest in the idea that the world is kind and that not only that people are good, but that we're all one, that I'm everybody that I see. Something I've been doing lately is if I'm on a walk, for example, and I see somebody and I'm like, oh man, that guy walks so weird. I immediately go, I walk so weird. I wonder what it looks like for somebody behind me. I might look really weird from the back. I don't know. I haven't seen myself walk. And it instantly just lifts it. As embarrassing as it is for me to admit how judgmental I have been, I can confirm that it's so much less than it was before. I feel a lot more peaceful towards other people, toward myself. And I credit part of that to not being on my phone all the time, walking by myself and being with myself, to reading the words of other people who are older and wiser than I am, to being able to laugh at things like having 3 kids. Hopefully you know that was a joke. The whole, if I didn't have kids, I'd be free. I mean, it is kind of true, but I also wouldn't be free of the sadness of not having them. I shouldn't have to explain these jokes. I want to get over the desire to explain jokes. That's what's so weird about being on a podcast. I'm so used to the rapid fire feedback. Is anybody going to like this? No, Leah. Wear the wig. Don't care if people like it. Be Bill Burr. They'll love you for being yourself. That's probably how I'm going to end this. You are me. We are one. We're the same. What you don't like about me is what you don't like about you. And what I don't like about you is that you haven't subscribed. No, I'm just kidding. That was so dumb. But seriously, I like doing this podcast. But I also know people that have done like 500 episodes of podcasts that still just don't. They're not. But I'm okay doing this. Okay, it is a little bit weird to have a camera on me. I'm kind of maybe I just want to like hide behind my wig. It does help if I get to 1,000 subscribers and I'm at 700 and something. You know what? I don't chase. You don't want to subscribe to this? I don't care. I love you. Because there are a lot of podcasts I've listened to that I haven't subscribed to. I'm you. You're me. I wish you well in whatever you're doing. If it seems fun, write a comment. I know you can write comments on Spotify. You can also write them on YouTube. I'm genuinely curious if anyone does the Cal Newport 5 things. That's all I want to know. I just want to know if somebody actually did it and any kind of improvement. And that's not some kind of weird like, hey guys, comment down below. If you personally know me, send me a text so that you know that I'm not just doing this for like me to please an algorithm or feed my ego. I'm genuinely interested in having a brain that can pay better attention because I know that it's different. When I was a kid, I used to memorize my friends' phone numbers. I'm not always confident what my phone number is sometimes. I've kind of worried that if I ever got taken to jail and I got one phone call, that I don't know my husband's cell phone number. I am reclaiming that, and I do plan to report my progress. I do feel calmer. I sleep better. I naturally woke up at 5:30 this morning. No alarm, just woke up, happy to get out of bed, go for my little clarity walk, and I found a mulberry tree. I already felt good, but I'm feeling better and more confident. Oh, this has been a fun podcast. And this wig kind of is itchy. All right. If on my next podcast I have a wig, you'll know that I've committed to the bit. If I don't, you can know that there's a good chance I'm not living my truth. No wig means a cry for help. Please tell me if you think it's a bad idea to wear a wig when I'm on a podcast tomorrow. I don't know if I'm going to wear a wig. I don't think I'll wear a wig on someone else's podcast. It's a bit weird. But my own podcast, this is my party I'm hosting. Thank you to all my sisters out there who encouraged me to wear the wig. The lady at the grocery store who told me to wear the wig. The lady who works at the wig store told me it was okay. Thank you to anybody who actually made it to the end of this. That's like crazy sweet of you. Thank you. I've been sort of Byron Katie. Thank you for listening to this podcast from the Dollar Tree version of Byron Katie.
Thank you for listening to the Leah Renee podcast. If you'd like to help me grow the old-fashioned way without having to bow to the likes of social media, visit my website, leahrenee.co. And as always,
Go to bed early, you doofus.